All right, we're at Baltimore 2017 talking to Anthony Burch about Old Man Jack, little Big Trouble in Little China series that's just come out. Easily first question, like how'd you actually come on board to write the series?
I was at a book signing for John Carpenter, and he liked a video game that I had written for. So I went up. It was called Borderlands 2, and I was like, oh hey, I heard you like Borderlands 2. I wrote it, like just big timing him like an asshole. And he, if I can curse, and he was like, oh, I'm a fan of yours. I went, no, I'm a fan of yours, and started freaking out. And I think when Boom approached them, he and Sandy, his wife, basically were like, oh, this jerk who wrote Borderlands, maybe he could do it.
So that was actually going to be my next question of, I've talked to a lot of the people who are working with Carpenters. All of them were fans beforehand. I'm guessing that like this is a huge deal for you, and you're kind of like walking on clouds sort of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I Big Trouble in Little China was like the movie that like hit my taste as a human being. Like basically everything that I like in fiction and in comedy, it's all in Big Trouble in Little China for me watching that when I was a kid. And so at one point I got his phone number to like call him and ask for like help on stuff or whatever. And I called him and was like, hey, here's the first thing. And then he was the nicest guy in the world and super cool. And then I just hung up and just sort of screamed like to no one. I was in an empty house just going like, ah, like I didn't know what to do. But he and Sandy are the coolest people. They're so nice.
Yeah, I've talked with Sandy a little bit. She's just like so down to earth.
Sandy's so down to earth.
Yeah. So with the series, obviously it takes place after the film. Jack is old, but he hasn't really changed at all. Maybe a little bit more crotchety, but as a whole, the world's kind of gone to crap. Is the better gone to hell would be actually the better way of putting it.
Hey.
Yeah, there we go. So with actually coming up with the story, how much did you work with John Carpenter about it? Like, how much leeway do you have with kind of expanding the world of Big Trouble in Little China?
I have a ton of leeway. Basically, whenever I come up with an outline for something crazy, like I want to kill off X character, I want to bring X character back, I just shoot it by him, and he usually goes, yeah, cool. The big help he gave was in just terms of just like, he's still a really good storyteller. So originally Jack was going to be in the middle of all this when the story began, and he thought, actually, it might be stronger if Jack's on the outside and has to come in because Jack is always best as an outsider. So went, oh my God, that's so smart. So then we put him in his little private heaven in Florida and then had him enter the story after that, and it makes the story 1,000 times better.
With the series, the first issue that kind of really stuck out to me is obviously capturing the humor of Big Trouble in Little China is key. What's really fascinating is that you got the patterns down of the way Jack speaks and kind of, what I would imagine. Like I heard his voice with all the dialogue. Writing, like how much are you trying to mimic, not just the character, but Kurt Russell's delivery and kind of what's come before. I mean, that's got to be like a little difficult as a writer.
Oh yeah, it's tricky. There's a fair amount of times where I'll write something and realize that's not Jack, that's like the Goon, or that's like that's some other comic book character I've seen before that it is infiltrating my thoughts. But yeah, it's usually you got to do it once over and just make sure, like, is this really Jack or is this just a dumb guy? Because Jack's dumb, but he's dumb in a very specific way that's actually kind of heroic and selfless. Yep. So it's a fine line.
Also dumb in a very smart way, a weird way of putting it. Like he's the person that it seems idiotic, but there's actually some method to the madness.
Yeah, it's like Jack's a guy who like he's never in the situation where his wits are at their most useful. Like you feel like if he was in a barroom brawl or if he was at a truck stop trying to seduce a waitress or something like that, then he'd be in his element. The whole thing of him is that he's so smart in this stuff that has nothing to do with what his actual element is.
Yep. Yeah. So with the series as a whole, like, how much are you kind of diving into what came before, mining it? Like how much of it's kind of new stuff that you're kind of coming up with? For people who are familiar with what's come before with Big Trouble in Little China, like how much can they expect to see of what's come before? What's come before?
They can expect to see a lot. Basically, we're going to always keep the story moving forward, but bringing back a lot of characters from the film, making a lot of. You don't have to have read the other Boom comics leading up to this point, but there's references to them, and it really helps contextualize Jack's journey. If I can be that presumptuous about just Jack Burton running into stupid shit. But yeah, it's. If you like Big Trouble in Little China, the film, there's certainly a lot of nuggets and a lot of returning characters that will be hopefully really fun for you to rediscover.
With the, obviously with the big thing of the film is, a lot of the action sequences are so over the top, but there's a great humor to it. When writing that sort of thing, how do you balance that action with the humor?
Well, thankfully, when you have Jack next to other people who know what they're doing, you could have the people who know what they're doing have really cool action stuff, and you have Jack just mess around and screw up. Like Eric Powell's run on the first run of Big Trouble in Little China comics, he did a great job of, like, anytime Jack was in a fight scene, Jack would just do something useless. He tries to punch somebody, he falls on his ass, like, always screws up, and it always felt right. So I basically just copied what Eric did, and so he'll be next to, you know, people like Lopan or awesome people shooting lightning out of their fingers, doing awesome stuff, and he'll be trying to punch somebody, and he'll spin himself around and fall over because he's a mess up. Like, yeah.
So obviously the first issue deals a lot with hells, various hells, and that seems to be a big thing out of the Big Trouble universe as a whole, of like all these different fun hells. You know, best way to describe it, say fun in a weird way. When coming up with it, like how much of it, you know, how fun were you having as a writer to be able to just come up with these goofy different hells and thinking through like what you would think of would be hell?
It was really fun because basically I imagined like what my hells would be, like what the things that would torment me, which is why the hell of minor discomforts of like, oh, you know, the water is lukewarm and when you touch a door it shocks you. Yeah, and you say you too when a waiter says enjoy your food. I'm like, those would be my hell because I'm really neurotic. And then imagining Jack Burton just coming and telling me what a wuss I am for finding those to be hell was really therapeutic in a way.
So with the series, you know, how much are you actually working with John Carpenter to put it together?
A lot. I'm sending him drafts of every script and of every outline, and he's giving me approval, giving me suggestions and stuff like that. Just had dinner with him a little while ago. We talked about stuff. Yeah, he's very involved.
Cool. And final question. So you said you worked in video games. How different is it to come up with a story for a video game script versus a comic series?
It's very different. It's like two completely different skill sets. Video games is like I'm developing an arena where the player can go here, 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 and everywhere they've got to get something that sort of still tells them what the story is. Comics or other linear media, it's like I have control, thank God. I don't have an agent of chaos screwing up my story. I can pace things out in a reasonable way. Comics are a lot easier in some ways and a lot harder in a lot of other ways because you actually have to pay specific interest to the way everything gets delivered and how it visually, you know, sort of works out, which is why it's been great to work with Jorge Corona because his art is so good it saves me from having to, I don't actually have to write well because Jorge's art is so good it just makes everything else work.
Actually, kind of you touched on a little bit. Was it interesting with you as a writer? You know, obviously video games are you know, choose your own adventure in a way and open-ended and people can do tons of stuff, especially Borderlands. With comics, it's just a very linear thing, but it's still at the same time people, you know, are kind of giving it their own spin once they consume it. Mm-hmm. For you as a writer, like how do you perceive like those two different ways of consuming something that you create?
I think they're all equally awesome because like when you consume something that's really interesting and speaks to you on some level, it kind of becomes yours to some extent. And that's what I'm doing, right? Like Big Trouble in Little China is not my movie, but it got to me and it got inside my soul and made me a different person. And now I'm getting to put my own weird, dumb spin on it in the comics form. So like it feels like that conversation between creator and audience is what makes art interesting and worthwhile, is that somebody could take something and like my favorite stuff I ever did on Borderlands was seeing people take my characters and ship them or rewrite them and make fan fiction and stuff. That was always the most satisfying thing, to know that you've connected with somebody in that way. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you talking.
Oh, yeah, thanks, man.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.